So you're sick of your 9 to 5 day job, or you just got laid off, or you're a student and the job market is just not looking so great right now. So you think to yourself, what if I started a hedge fund?
Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Qi, and I'm the CEO of Databento, and actually, I'm also the founder of a company called Domeyard. So my first company, which is Domeyard, I started out of a dorm room about 8 or 9 years ago, and today I actually left Domeyard to focus on launching Databento. So Databento is basically a data business. We focus on low latency market data, and it's like a self-service platform. So the goal is to decrease the barriers to entry, increase access to data from home, from anywhere. And that's it.
I love it. Hi, Christina.
It's so good to see you again.
All right. So I'm just trying to figure out when was the last time I saw you. I mean, because again, I feel like I see you all the time because I see you online all the time. So
Yeah.
let's see, where did we meet? We met at Venture Cafe, but I'm trying to think of the year. 3 years ago or something like that.
I
Like
think it was longer than that. It was a
it
long
was when
time.
you first started when you first started your first company. So it was right when you started getting a lot of attention. Is when you
Yeah.
oh whoa, I don't want to do all these interviews. Everybody wanted you. So was it? I mean, what year was that?
To be honest, I don't remember which year. It might have been like 2016 or 17.
Crap, time is flying. Time is flying. All right.
I'm
So
sorry.
before we even get to where the company is, we need to introduce who you are. I already know you're. I mean, I say the word rock star all the time. Everyone that's probably listening is thinking like, how many rock stars does she knows? I literally am a magnet for rock stars. I only like I find you. Once I find you, I want to keep you in my world. I watch you, the mini stalking, but I watch you because you're doing such a great thing, and also I get inspired by you guys. So can you tell everybody where did you come from before you even got into the business world? Before you got into the whole entire like being a rock star?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, thank you for that, by the way. I think rock stars attract fellow rock stars, and that's why, I look up to you and everything you're doing, by the way. And just to preface this, thank you for everything you've done for the entrepreneurial community. I've known you and followed your journey as well for a really long time. So kudos to everything you've done and your huge podcast.
I'm blushing. Stop it. It's all about you. Stop. Okay. All right, back to you. Where did you come from, Miss Christina?
Okay, so I was actually born in China, and when I was really young, my parents actually immigrated to the United States, and it was actually after the Tiananmen Square massacre in Beijing. That we come from Beijing, and so they came over to the U.S., started waiting tables at Chinese restaurants, making $1 an hour. This is like in the 90s, so they're making $1 an hour here at these washing dishes for these at Chinese restaurants basically, and raising me as a child. And what's interesting, people always ask, like, did you know you were poor? Or like, and I was like, no, as a kid, right? Like that was my world, was like, I was literally after school, I'd go to the restaurant and just hang out all day at this restaurant, like opening the sugar packets and I don't know, just messing things up for people basically, and being a nuisance. But I loved it. It was a great childhood. And I didn't know what finance was at all. Actually, people always ask, how the hell did you end up? Sorry, how the heck did you end up in finance? And I grew up in Utah, by the way. We're
It's
swearing.
okay. It's okay to say hell. It's like
Okay,
you
okay.
can't use F bomb because I'm not an F bomb person. But you can say.
Thank you. I grew up in Utah where anything close to cursing is like totally unacceptable and by Utah
I was
standards.
Governor Romney's press secretary. I get it. Oh, I know.
Awesome. So yeah, then let me think. So yeah, and then in high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do at all. I actually applied to MIT at the last minute. And what happened was for homecoming, I was in science club, and they send like a science club. Every club needs to send a candidate down the aisle. And so I was science club, and I wore like a science club sash. And then instead of wearing like a dress, I decided to wear like a lab coat and like a beaker and like goggles. I looked totally nerdy amongst all the dresses, and it was like a pageant. And then there I was looking totally nerdy and out of place. And then I was, I felt kind of weird. I felt really embarrassed actually on stage, because like, oh crap, did I really just do this? Everyone's gaping. All the moms, all the pageant moms are like looking at me like, what is wrong with this girl? And then it was funny because then by total coincidence that night, I was like in my car and I was like looking at my like flip phone at the time, and I saw like, oh, there's an ad for MIT. I got in the, like an email about MIT. Have you heard of MIT? What is this about? And I was like, oh, whatever. It talks about innovation and all these buzzwords. I couldn't care less. Like every ad talks about innovation and like making a difference and whatever. And then I scrolled to the very bottom and there's like a woman wearing a lab coat. She looked just like me, wearing a lab coat with her beaker and goggles. And I was like, holy crap. Wait, I should apply to this school. This is awesome. And so I applied and got in, and I was like, the rest was kind of history, right? And so that was my background kind of before the company. And then I started the company while I was in school.
Wow. So everyone's always rushed to talk about the company. And I'm definitely more about the whole entire the person. So I tell everybody, I'm like, I'm all about the LinkedIn, not the website. So let's talk more about the LinkedIn. Beijing, one of my favorite places. One of my favorite places where I was in Beijing and I loved it because living in Boston, we could be in New York, but we're in Boston. And I love that the smallness of Beijing, where everyone's like, what, you didn't like Shanghai? I go, it's not that I didn't like Shanghai. I found that Beijing was a lot more homey. It reminded me of home. I remember going down one of the alleys is with two of my friends, and they're like, what are we doing? I'm like, I'm going for an adventure, and it's on you, but I'm going for an adventure. And these guys were in the back of a restaurant, and they're like, in the back, they're eating their supper, and they were eating chicken feet, and they were spicy chicken feet. And I'm like, and I can't talk Mandarin, I can't talk anything. And so all I have is my English. And I'm like, what's that? And I'm sign languaging, and my friends are like, what the hell is happening? And I'm like, and they're looking at me, I'm not looking at them, and they're like, do you want to try? I'm like, yep. And my friend's like, don't eat that. I'm like, they're at a restaurant, like they're eating it. What's gonna happen? So good. Chicken feet freaks me out, but my grandmother used to cook it. So it wasn't like I wasn't aware of it, but it was so good. And we literally had a laugh without talking. Just laughing, eating chicken feet in Beijing, in an alley. No, we knew we were communicating one way or another. So I have to say, I love your hometown.
Oh, thank you. What an incredible cultural experience.
Oh my gosh, sweetest place. People at morning. I mean, I'm a morning person. We'll have everyone in the park, in the main park, what's the name of the big park?
I don't know. There's a lot of big parks in Beijing.
There's a big park where like everyone is, all the older people. I mean, like literally, like, I mean, they could have been hundreds of years old. I mean, everyone looks so good out there, and they're doing their exercises. They're waiting in line to get in there. They pick their spot in the park. Oh, we can go on, but okay. So
my grandpa's 95 years old, and he still does the daily exercise routines. So it works.
it really does. It really does. I love it. So how old? I mean, so how old were you when you came to the States?
I was 3.
So how often do you go back, or how often have you been back?
Before the pandemic, I would go back about once a year. As my grandparents got older and hit their 90s, I was like, I got to go back and, understand my culture better, because it's also, for me, a cultural thing where I grew up in Utah, and Chinese food is hard to come across, like the chicken feet, right? Don't get that in Utah. So I got to go back.
The real good stuff.
Yep, to get back to China to get the chicken feet, and then here we get the orange chicken, which is still good. I love orange chicken, but you can't get orange chicken in China, by the way. It's like a totally not available there. So
well, it was so funny because one of the things that made me laugh the most was there was a Chinatown in China, and I'm like, I looked at the tour guide, I'm like, why? She's like, because Americans get confused. I'm like, I can't be part of this. So I took pictures of the whole entire the arts of Chinatown in China, because all the tourists went there, and they did have all the things that we eat here at Chinese restaurants they had in Chinatown in China.
Oh, that's amazing. I need to check this out.
It's so bizarre. All right. So Tiananmen Square, I found it to be so fascinating. We're there in Tiananmen Square, and you're talking to people about it, and everyone just like zips. You're like, don't talk to me. I don't want to be seen. How is it that you're highly educated, highly educated, rock star, highly educated in the States. You go back home. How are you able, and we know that Facebook, the restrictions on so many different things. How do you go back home to the mainland and even have a conversation with people, or do you not touch it at all? Because I'm first generation from Haiti. When I go to Haiti, it literally is the same kind of thing where like there's certain things you just don't even broach the conversation. So how is it like that with you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way, you know. It's kind of scary there because there's no freedom of speech and you can get arrested for what you say in, you know, in not just China, many other countries, you know. The US is so unique in that you can protest, well, for the most part, you know, these days you get arrested for protesting anyway, but I don't know, people, you know, it's a lot more free though compared to in China where you get arrested for posting on social media, you know, that's a whole nother level of crazy, right? And so I can ask I've asked my cousins, my aunt and uncle, you know, I'm always like, hey, you know, like one of the questions I'm kind of naive about this. One of the questions I ask is like, what do you think of Winnie the Pooh? You know, like, are you allowed to, cause you know, the prime minister of China, Xi Jinping, is often compared to Winnie the Pooh. And it got to the point where Winnie the Pooh was banned in China. I don't know if you know about this. Yeah, like
No, had no idea.
Winnie the Pooh was banned in China. So I asked my aunt, I'm like, hey, you know, what do you think? And she's like, yeah, like they can sell like Winnie the Pooh merchandise and stuff, but you just can't, you know, make a political statement out of Winnie the Pooh or else like you'll get arrested or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's rough, you know, because here you look at how we compare, you know, we compare Donald Trump to an orange, I don't know, to other objects, to, you know, we compare prime ministers and leaders to all kinds of objects and things and cartoon characters, right? And for better or worse, right? I don't know if that, I mean, it's bowling, I don't know, right? It's they're in charge
Well,
of kind of.
well, I always find it so interesting because you literally you're all about innovation. You're all about thinking so outside of the box. What you've created, and we'll talk about that in a few. What you've created is it's new. Where, where I come from, where you come from, it's very much tradition. And if you go outside of the norm, it's just like it's not seen. But also, big thing, you're a female. You're a female and you're a rock star. I mean, I'm going to keep saying it. I'm sorry. You're going to feel uncomfortable, but I'm going to keep saying it. But I mean, you are a female coming in, and it literally has in most situations, it would have people thinking, shouldn't you just be married and have children right now? And so when you got into MIT, yes, the elite schools are part of the plan. But then when you started veering towards creating your own business, how were you seen, especially when you're going back home, and how are you seen by your family that's here? And also, you were raised in Utah, where primarily Mormons. That's a whole different bag of beans. So with all of these things on your back, on your shoulder, I mean, part of your history, part of your story, how are you even thinking about building a business?
Oh my goodness, that's like one of the best questions I've ever gotten. I mean, so I'll tell you funny stories. Like last time I was in China, actually, I visited my grandmother on my mom's side, who's also 95 by coincidence, and she presented me with a dowry when I got to China. So she was like, "Oh, here's some goats, and you know, here's some cash, and like please take." It was only like $200. It was like all she had left, and she was like, "Here's some goats," and you know, I was like, "What is this?" And my mom had to explain, like, this is a wedding dowry for, you know, she doesn't think she's gonna survive until your wedding. She doesn't think I'm ever gonna get married, and so she gave me the dowry early as like the present, and she's like, "Please take this and give it to your future husband. Like, give these goats." And I was like, goats. So it's still in China. So
where are the goats now?
My aunt and uncle have adopted the goats and are taking care of them. And I told them, like, don't kill them, don't eat them, you know, like, don't do anything with them. I know they all live on like a farm or whatever, you know, they live in these conditions where they kind of eat the food that they raise, right? But I was like, no, please don't do anything, and like I'll figure it out later, you know. But yeah, so that's basically what happened. I think my mom probably just took the money home herself. I was like, you know, it was like $200, right? And it was really nice of my grandma to do that. And you know, she thought that was the culture and tradition back then, is to give a dowry to the woman and then have the woman give it to, you know, to the husband, right, when she gets married. But she's like, oh, my granddaughter's never gonna get married. Oh man. And then, you know, it's funny because I come home to Utah, right, and most of my actually almost all of my classmates from high school are married with many children. Many of them have, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 children, and I'm 29, so you know, I'm about to hit 30. But they're all around my age, and they have many children, and so I'm starting to feel that pressure. Everyone's like, oh, you got to get married and, like, you know, have a bunch of kids and settle down. But I'm kind of like, well, my company, like you're asking, you know, I think my company, I really enjoy working on my company. It does feel to me like it's such a long full-time commitment to me that I really enjoy working on it. And I do want to have kids one day, but you know, one thing that makes me feel better is the lifespan. Look at my grandparents are 95, right? So I'm like, okay, well, you know, if I can live that long, then I don't mind having kids, you know, in my 30s. Or even my mom had my brother in her 40s actually. So I was like, if it's possible today to do, yeah, the
Well,
risk is higher, but
well, I was gonna say I agree with you on that one because I mean I feel like I go people are on a certain timeline, and I was just saying that earlier with someone where Catholics, Israelis, and Mormons populating the world, which is fantastic. I go they want to. I mean they want to have a lot of children, which is great. I mean if I was able to, I would have had six. I mean because I think that having those big families are great, but I also there was like so much more that I wanted to accomplish. And nowadays you don't have to have your children like when you're in your 20s. So you have the Anderson Coopers of the world, you have the Hoda, I forget, I keep forgetting Hoda's name, but she's like on CBS and NBC, and she just had hers, and she's just getting married, and she's 56 or 55 or 56, and so it's two little ones at home, and so I feel like I go, if you have it in you, you can totally do it. One of my aunts, my greater aunts, she came to America at 70 years old, and she had a whole career. So she had 5 kids. She had her entire life in Haiti. 70 years old, she came here. She lived to 100 years old. Her husband lived to 104 years old.
that's incredible.
Exactly. Good. I know, great genes for both of us. So that is definitely not on us to like hurry up, get married, hurry up, have kids. That's definitely not there. But we want it, but we don't need to rush on it. So bring it now to you. I mean, like the story of your family. Do you have entrepreneurs in your family? Because that, and also I don't know how your parents survived on $1 because that's shocking. So I mean, do they have this entrepreneurial essence to them on top of working at the restaurants? And where did you get it? Because I mean, you're coming in from MIT, coming in from being an innovator, you could have gone anywhere. You could have worked at any business whatsoever. You chose to start your own business. What happened between mom and dad are making $1, you're taking sugar packets and you're ripping them up, you get into MIT, but then you have a business. Where did that come from?
There were no entrepreneurs in my family. Even when I was in college, I kept on, you kind of say to yourself, I was like, I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't have the DNA. I don't, my family has no idea what that even is. And then what happened was I had a really terrible internship experience. I interned on Wall Street 3 years, 3 times in a row. At different large bulge bracket banks, right? And one of the there were ups and downs of these internships, but one experience in particular, there was a lot of discrimination. There was racism, sexism, like anything you could possibly imagine. I was called I shouldn't say all the names they called me because some of them are a little bit racist, but like they called me some names that just weren't that great. I grabbed coffee every day. They called me the lazy coffee girl because I didn't grab coffee within like 5 minutes one time, and they made me do push-ups. I don't know. So there's a lot of punishment. Like it felt like there's just punishment.
I'm sorry. Did you just say they made you do push-ups?
Yeah.
This is a frat. I mean, this is like an actual company.
Yeah, it was fratty, and that's how they described their culture. And I should have known better at the time, but I was desperate for an internship, and so I took on the role and slowly realized, wow, this is kind of like Wolf of Wall. It was funny because it's around the same time Wolf of Wall Street came out, and I watched the movie. I was so triggered by it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is my real life. Do I really want to be doing this? Drink. It's like a lot of drinking culture and whatever else, but the thing is, there's like punishments for everything. Like if you don't drink this much, you get punished by doing push-ups, or there's always some kind of weird punishment. And so I just didn't like that experience. I thought, I can't imagine myself being in this environment and thriving in this environment. And so that was when I decided, well, I have to do something after. I didn't get a return offer either, by the way. So I came home all dejected. I was like, well, I'm about to graduate and I have nothing on my plate, so might as well just try something. And that's how I started the business, was just coming home and then trading on my own. And like now there's like Robinhood and all these cool platforms that make it easy to trade, by the way, for anybody.
Oh no. So don't talk about them. We need to talk more about you, because
Okay.
Well, no, the thing is where you just kind of like slid that in there, like, oh yeah, then I started trading. I'm sorry, it's something that most people, yeah, we're aware of it, but most people don't do it because there's all these, like the conversation of you're not allowed to do it by yourself, and so you have to go through a broker. And so you have these experiences, which, I mean, I'm so sorry you had that. I mean, that's just craziness in regards of like the financial world. But I have a friend that worked at Lehman. I have a cousin that's worked at Lehman. They left, well, obviously Lehman shut down. And then they went on their merry way. But they even said that the world of finances has changed dramatically. Did it change for the better, or did it change for the worse? And especially for women?
Oh, since then, I think since 10 years ago, it's changed for the better for sure, for women, and in so many different ways. Like in terms of, if you just look at the stats of like the percentage of women in the industry. You look at the CEOs of, I think like the Citibank CEO that's coming in, she's a woman. So it's really promising to see that there are more and more women kind of coming into these leadership roles, and also more women being recognized, by the way, too. Like we need more awards for women to like get that recognition and to be seen on TV, on stage, and everything. And so there's a lot more of those. So that's always been good. I think there's still a long ways to go now. If you still look at the tops of these banks, it might be like one woman CEO, but then you look at like the next level below her and it's kind of like, oh, it's still 99% men. So that has still got to change. But I think because of these movements of recent, with Black Lives Matter, and with companies realizing like, crap, they need to be more diverse, I think companies are starting to look inward and be like, oh, how do we improve our hiring practices to eliminate bias? And those are good steps, but it'll take years, of course. Like it's not an overnight process. It has to take years and years before that actually ends up happening, where they hire someone who ends up rising in the ranks eventually, right? And so that can take a while, maybe even a generation before it changes. But I'm so happy to see, because like even for my instance, like the experiences I had during my internship of being called kind of derogatory names for my gender.
That was just 10 years ago too. I mean,
yeah.
I'm dramatically older than you, although I don't look it, but I am dramatically older than you. And it was just 10 years ago you had these experiences, which is, it seems so absurd to know that you were going through this in a financial institution.
Yeah. It was recent, like this was post-financial crisis, like at a time when everyone was being scrutinized, and yet they couldn't care less about, the way that they treated people on the team. It was very, the bro culture and the fratty culture was definitely there. And sometimes they don't notice it, by the way, too, is one thing is that, like, even in my own company, one thing I realized, by the way, is like, we used to have also sort of a bro, not really that bad of a culture in our company, but like, we tried to be better. Like that was one of the reasons we started the company, was like, let's have a better culture. But then, at one point we had like mostly guys in the firm, which, was, I guess, just naturally the activities were like, let's go drink, let's go watch a football game, and then when we started hiring more women, and then we realized, wait a second, as soon as we had like 2 or 3 women on the team, one would be like, hey, let's do pedicures over the weekend. And this other one was like, yeah, that sounds great. And we all be like, yeah, let's go get pedicures. And then suddenly the guys are like, wait, can we get pedicures too? And it just became like this cool, like this traditionally feminine activity that no guy would have ever proposed it. It became the cool thing because there was a critical mass of women, even just 2 or 3 women in their company who wanted to do something together. And so suddenly all the guys wanted in too on this traditionally kind of feminine thing. So, that for me was a huge, even just in my own company, a big improvement over the years of seeing different styles of activities, and like not forcing anyone to do a pedicure or to go drink, but just making sure that there's like a diversity of things we can do, after work or on the weekends if people wanted to, so that they can feel more welcome and propose things that they want to do themselves.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed, I mean, not only did I notice of you just in conversation right now, but since the day that I met you, you're not a wallflower. I mean, you're very verbal. And so when you're with a group of guys, I mean, like it's not like you're seeing a group of guys, you're just like kind of working and just like, I want the best of the people to be surrounded by. And the women that are coming in, when they are mentioning the let's go for a pedicure, I'm sure like if they were wallflowers, they would have never mentioned that. They would have gone to the bars, they would have hung out. You're attracting the same types of people where if you have something to say it. And I think that's that's a testament to you, because if you were a wallflower, most people could have come into your company. You could have created a company, people would have come in, but then they would have just kind of probably just stepped all over you. You can't be in the financial world and not know what you're doing. You can't be in the financial world without verbalizing what you're doing and bringing on people that will collaborate with you and complement you. And these women are probably just doing the same exact thing. They're following trait because you brought them in and suggesting a pedicure versus drinking. Yeah, of course I'm going to do that because I'm secure in who I am.
Yep, exactly. And then also encouraging, like during our weekly meetings, we actually have a round robin where I call on every single person so that if they do have something to say, they have a chance to speak and to say it, so that in case, especially these meetings when they get bigger and bigger, people start to speak over each other, or the loudest people to kind of, like me, I'm a pretty loud person. I dominate the room with like talking. And I realize that's not right when there's a lot of people who want to talk, but they just don't, they can't raise their hand when it's through Zoom. There's so many people going, it's hard to kind of raise your hand in that situation. So I make sure to call on every single person every week and make sure that they have their chance to say whatever they want to say. And so that also helps in terms of helping them understand that their voice is valued, that we want to hear what they have to say, no matter how, whether it's just suggesting a pedicure or something really important about work, whatever it is, like, it doesn't matter. It's important to just hear them, and hear them talk. So that was, for me, also a good lesson I learned.
Oh my God, that's fantastic. All right, so now let's get back to the work. What is it? So like your first company out of the gate, talk to us about what that is and how and where did you get the idea to do it?
The idea just came from out of the blue after the internship. I was like, well, I want to do trading. I liked trading, but I didn't like the company and like the culture that I had worked in. And so I was like, well, might as well just start trading on my own. And so, literally, I had a friend who had like $1,000 and, that was it. And we were like, well, let's just put this, into like a trading system. And we used like a retail broker actually, and just used a cheap brokerage and just started trading on our own. And, over time, it just, we actually made a lot of money in like the first 3 or 4 months. We were like, oh my gosh, this is like, it was like $40,000 or something. But for a bunch of college kids, I was $40,000 in debt. And so to make up that money so I could like pay off my debts, I was like, wow, I can like pay off my debts now. And not only that, like, this is more money than I've ever seen in my life. And so to me, I was like, that was when we realized this could be a thing. We could actually compete against these large companies and potentially start our own business. And so we just kept on trading. We actually would trade at night. We traded like European markets when they opened at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then we would go to class during the day. And speaking of like, China and like Boston, America, and like the differences as well. I told my parents this story. My parents were saying, in a lot of countries like China and India, the dorm rooms in college there, they have curfew. So what happens is they turn off the power, electricity in your dorm at like, what is it? Like, I think it's 10 p.m. or midnight or something. So you have to go to sleep. But back then there's no laptops, no cell phones, right? So you just go to sleep. That's what happens. And then at MIT, they did a survey of like, 1 year when I was a student, they like did a survey of like what hours are students like most awake, and like it was on sleep, like what times do people sleep, and turns out most students are awake at 3 a.m. Like that's the time when you work on the thing you really want to do, right? What keeps you up at night? That's
well,
what
it's a sweet spot, because I mean I have that 11 a.m. to 3 that 3 p.m. I can't work. I mean, I'm useless. I could be playing Candy Crush for days. I mean, it's just, I'm useless, but I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and from 4 to 11, I'm churning. And then from like around 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock to like 10, if I go to sleep. But if I'm feeling the groove, I'll pull an all-nighter. And everyone's like, at your age, we're not in college. I'm like, when you have it in you, you do it. And I mean, it's true. There's times because I'm a runner, and I do the path on the Esplanade, and you're seeing all the lights at MIT. I mean, you're seeing all the lights on at any given time. So you're never afraid of running in the dark, because it's always lit in that one section of town in Cambridge.
That's amazing. See, it's like when you're driven by something, you just go and do it, right? It gives you energy to do that kind of stuff. And so I think that's the same thing for me, was starting the business. We had the energy at 3 a.m. to do this, because it just was something that drove us for no other reason than we just liked it, and then
how are you able to maintain this trade, like this new thing you're learning how to trade? I think it's amazing that your friend trusted you with their $1,000. So I think that's amazing that you're trusted. So you found that hot spot of like, oh my God, we made a lot of money. You still are going to classes. So how are you maintaining both of them? And did the luck run out after $40,000?
Oh yeah, the luck ran out for sure. I mean, nothing lasts forever. You hit the jackpot once, and then it's like those people who hit the jackpot and they spend all their money, and then it's like, oh, I'm bankrupt now. It does happen like that, and there's ups and downs. So we we did okay for a while, and then around the time of graduation, actually, we're like, crap, nothing's working anymore. But we still wanted to start the business, and so we continued to, we were like, let's just overhaul everything, take our time, build our own software, and like make this into a real company. And so just kind of continue to do that. And then in terms of learning to trade, to be honest, like a lot of the learning was just trial and error, like everything you learn in a tech, like even think about today, this year with the financial crisis, right? Like everything I learned in a textbook about how to evaluate the markets, how to evaluate stuff, like you got to throw all of that down the drain, because it just doesn't make any sense this year, given you got to throw all your economic analysis and all the tools you learned in the classroom, because it just doesn't make any sense. Oil prices were negative, like interest rates are negative. It's like these things that you never would have ever expected to happen, and no academic had ever predicted. And so like that's kind of what happened with us too, was like everything was so unpredictable on our end that we just made a bunch of mistakes. I actually funny story was, I don't know if you've heard of there's a book called Principles by Ray Dalio.
Yep.
So he wrote so it's a famous book in the industry, right? And it's like he's one of the most famous I guess CEOs of our time in the hedge fund world today. And in his book Principles talks about all these principles that he set and how they worked out for him. And what's funny was actually at the beginning of starting our business about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, I actually, by coincidence, we wrote our list of principles as well, a list of things that we thought were values that we wanted in our business, whether that was like having a flat culture, it's like structure wise being flat, or like hiring service providers with like a good reputation, investing in like high value, very big brand name service providers. And like it turns out almost all the principles we set for ourselves was completely wrong. And like completely wrong. And so actually I'm writing a book about these experiences, because at the time, when I talk about having a flat culture, I can convince pretty much anyone why this kind of made sense at the time. But then now that I think about it, holy crap, it turned out so awful for us in practice. In theory, it's one thing. You think having a flat structure, for me, my reasoning for it was like, well, I can hire someone 3 times my age and we'll all be called partner, and so it's like we're equals, and it's a great feeling to feel like your voice is being heard, but then we realized, wait a second, that makes no sense, because we hired, we actually had an office manager who literally their job was just like clean the dishes and like wash the tables and like clean the office, right? And they demanded the same salary as the highest level software engineer in our company, and we were like, whoa, we can't do that. And she's like, well, I'm a partner too, so I deserve to be paid as much as the other partners. And that was when we realized this is not going to work. We actually need to go back to traditional titles. So that,
well, you know what? I just want to stop you for a second, because just so everyone else is understanding. When you say flat culture, please explain to the masses what you mean by flat culture.
Yeah, absolutely. So back then we had kind of a naive definition of flat culture. I looked online at Zappos and Google and all these other companies that were trying to be like as flat as possible, meaning like some companies got rid of titles even, and they would call everyone, they would kind of flatten out the title. So like on our end, we called everyone a partner in the company, whether you were 21 years old or 61 years old, and had like 40 years of experience. Like we just kind of called everyone a partner, thinking like that way we could treat everyone equal. But actually equality is different from fairness. There's a huge, difference, right? And it wasn't fair that the 61-year-old who's worked so hard in his whole career is being literally called the same title as someone who just got out of college. And so there were a lot of kind of issues there where being, flat wasn't necessarily like the best solution for us as a team. We could still, we wanted a culture. I realized ultimately we actually just wanted a culture where people's voices could be heard, where like someone who's 21 would be not afraid to like, speak up and voice their concerns and stuff like that. And we realized we could do that, without having to call them all like partner, for instance. And so that was one of the biggest lessons we kind of learned throughout this process, is like all those like cultures that we thought were great as we were naive millennials, and we like read all these books and heard about Google and how cool their culture was. And how Google has all these cool perks, and like, they have their slides and their, I don't know, nap rooms. And we thought that was like the coolest thing ever because we're millennials. And then, actually one other thing we realized was that millennials people in general don't stay because of perks like that as well. People stay because of other people on the team. They stay because their own voice is being heard, because they're being valued as a person, and that they're learning. And so we actually used to have all these cool perks as well. And then we realized quickly, like no one cared at all.
Yeah, we don't care about the pool table as much as you thought we cared about the pool table or the ping pong table. It's funny because like whenever I go to any company, I see that I'm like, yeah. So where's the business? I just want to know where the business. Who are the players? So who are the players in regards of? I mean, who's your ideal customer? And if I'm your customer, is it an individual or is it an organization for the first company that you were in? And how do we interact with you? And then how did you transition from that company to the second one, to the present one?
Yeah. So what's interesting about a hedge fund is that all of our customers are basically our investors in the fund, actually. So a hedge fund's business model, for people who aren't familiar, is basically all we do is we take money from, usually from like wealthy billionaires and pensions and endowments, and we take that money and we manage that money for them. And so usually a small chunk of their money, because we're a tiny fund, not like all of their money, because that would be too much and really crazy for like a 20-something-year-old to do. But we take a little tiny sliver of money from like various kinds of investors out there, and then we will trade it in the stock market, or buy different types of securities and engage in different types of like trading strategies basically with that money. And so all of our clients were basically so people actually, when I go to like these, I used to teach at these like MBA courses, and actually I get more questions from MBA students about like, oh, what difference are you making in the world, right? Because I think that's a really relevant question. If I tell them, oh, I'm like taking billionaire money and then I'm just trading it, and I'm like, yeah, we make billionaires richer, and that's something that I think every financial firm should say, and they should never deny that they're not a charity. You should not cover it up and pretend like you're a charity, because that's just wrong as well. And so
I'm just gonna give you a bravo for that one, because whenever people sit there and say like, why are you in business? I'm like, because I love money. I love money and I love making money. I go and I work really hard, but guess what? I give back in so many other ways. And so do not condemn me for the fact that I'm making money. So I love that you just said that with no hesitation.
Exactly. And then I denied it for the longest time too, especially when Flash Boys is another famous book in our industry that came out about high frequency trading, and we do high frequency trading. And so people would I got in a lot of trouble here and there. People always ask me ethical, moral questions and stuff, and I just was the first one to say like, look, yeah, we're not doing any good for society. And I was like, wait a second, then why am I doing this? And so that was actually part of the reason why we started the second venture, and I'm actually leaving Domeyard by the end of this year. And the primary reason is just because realizing why don't we just address one of the biggest issues we faced while starting this hedge fund for other people, and try to fix the data problem in this industry, which is that data today is both it's sold in bulk, it's really expensive. So when you think of data, you think of like Bloomberg terminal, and the Bloomberg terminal is like $25,000 per person. It's pretty
Well,
expensive.
all right, no, so you think of that when we think of data, is like people think of their phones.
Oh yeah, that's true too.
Yeah. So it's all relative in regards of like who you're talking to, but yeah, you're thinking about when you're talking about data, you're thinking like big, like we're not thinking at that level of data.
Right, exactly. So we decided, what, why don't we make it more accessible to people? And in the financial industry as well as other industries, if you're a student, working on a thesis and you need good quality data to analyze for your thesis project, like why don't we give you access to that? You don't have to pay Bloomberg $25,000, because that just makes no sense as a student. And so just making sure people have access to the best quality data, but at a lower price, they can buy it a la carte. So we decided, why not start this business and really focus our way in terms of like client service and bringing a product to fruition, instead of supporting these billionaires. And not to say that all billionaires are evil or bad, right? Like I don't want to say that about our own clients. Although we did have a few evil, like I'll say, for instance, I can say this because he's dead now, or supposedly dead. Jeffrey Epstein was a client of ours. So he was, I don't know how to describe it. He was 1 degree of separation, but he was a client of someone who was like a client of ours.
Yep.
And that was when, when he was like arrested and everything, I was like, oh my gosh, because actually I had Googled him back in like, 2015 or something, a long time ago, when I had first heard of him. And we were doing our due diligence on these investors. That was another principle we got wrong, which was like, we didn't do far enough like due diligence on our own investors. When your investors do due diligence on you, they ask for everything. I mean, people ask for my high school report card.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, I don't have that.
Well, think about it. I mean, it's my money that I'm giving to you. And so like people are they're invested. They're invested in their money. And so to find out someone that's going to be in charge of either growing it or losing it, it's a big thing.
Exactly. And I think one thing we should have done is actually thought about, well, if they're giving us our money, we work for them, right? And do I want to work for someone like Jeffrey Epstein? And I didn't know, actually. So I Googled him back then in 2015, and all the photos on the internet were like with the prime minister of these different countries, or like celebrities all over Hollywood, and like the British royal family, and the president of Harvard and MIT. So I thought, okay, this guy I just saw from the Google images, and went, okay, he must be like a famous philanthropist. I literally thought he was a philanthropist, and that was like a hedge fund guy and a philanthropist, and that's it. I had no idea that he was running.
No one did. I mean, it's not just, I mean, like 10 years ago, like when you started the company, no one had an idea because it was like hidden. The people that did know were like investigators, etc. But it wasn't out in the whole entire, it wasn't out as much as it is obviously after Me Too. It came out like full out. And so for someone that started a company, it would have made sense because everyone knows, like, if I'm going to do something, if I'm going to work with someone, I'm going to Google them.
Yep, exactly. So I just did a general Google search and then had no idea what was going on. And, it was just crazy that I just felt awful for supporting, indirectly kind of supporting this guy and expanding the size of his wallet so he can do whatever the crap he wants to, and that was for me a huge time when I realized, like, even ethically, like, I can't go that far, that's just ridiculous. And I had to draw the line somewhere on what kinds of investors, I am okay with and not okay with. And he was one of those people. I'm just like, you know what? And then I look back and I was like, wait a second, I am so freaking privileged today. Like, I can do whatever I want to in my life, and I can walk away from this business if I wanted to. And so then that's the decision, like, okay, I need to try to walk away, and then slowly over time have kind of exit, transitioning out of the fund basically at this point. So
are you still, I mean, so you're the founder, I mean, are you stepping down as in like letting it run? It's still, I mean, like you're on the board, etc., or are you just like walking away, you're clean cut, and then you're going to stick to the data? How does that work with because a lot of founders do it in different ways. So how is it going to be working for you?
Yeah, I'll step down operationally. And in terms of the board, I actually might step down from the board as well. I haven't quite decided yet how much or little involvement I want. The good news is, just so you guys know, today, like, we don't support people like that anymore. So, we've cleaned up the fund. We redid all of our due diligence on every single investor, being like, look, in light of recent events of Epstein going to prison, et cetera, we're required to do this, right? And so every investor understood and complied and gave us their background information, and just like information on like where you get your money from, who are your LPs, what are their names, so we could just make sure we do a general check on everybody and make sure that there was nothing like that crazy right in the fund. And so,
I think that because of this time that we have, everyone's doing it. I mean, like Harvard, Limelight, Prince Edward, Andrew, Limelight. I mean, everyone. It's like the Kevin Bacon's separate 7 degrees of separation. Don't want to put Kevin Bacon with the same pool, but in terms of everyone that was connected in one way or another during this time, they did the whole entire due diligence as well, because usually you're at work, usually you're moving so fast that you're like, I'll get to it. So this was the time that people took the time to do that. So I'm happy that you did it, as well as everybody else that's out there, because you don't want to walk away from a pandemic and also going back into the work world and have everything the way it was. Thus, going to the world of the pandemic. How was this pandemic? What did the pandemic do for you? Like, so we start getting the buzz around like January, February, normal-ish. Start getting the buzz around March, and then we go into shutdown, and then we're in months and months and months of dealing with this, and continuous months. We have pandemics where Black Lives Matters. We have that economic downfall. We have the corona. 10 years ago, the economy was in a bad place again. So you were there 10 years ago. You've evolved. We're here right now. What did you experience at the time when it was happening? How has it affected your company? And where do you feel that the industry is going? Because right now we're just constantly looking at the ups and downs, and a lot more downs.
Yeah, exactly.
Very fully loaded question there. Very fully loaded.
It's been a time of reflection, I think, for everyone, a time of pivoting, for everyone, no matter what industry you work in. I think it's just affected so many people out there. And if it doesn't affect you, it affects your friends, it affects your family, people around you. And so everyone has this crazy responsibility of like staying indoors. And, I've been indoors for like the longest time. I'll go on a run on occasion because our neighborhood's empty. But, besides that, we've had neighbors who've passed away from coronavirus, and just really awful situations all around. I've had friends who've passed away from coronavirus. I had a track and field friend who used to run like 15 miles a day, and then now she can't even walk a block without, she says she survived it, but she can't even walk a block without gasping for breath. And her whole life turned upside down because of this incident. So for me, I realized very early on, this is no joke. This is a serious thing. And even though a lot of people in Utah don't wear masks, I was one of the one of the earliest people, I was like, no, I'm going to wear a mask. I don't care if people stare and laugh at me, and call me the China virus or whatever. I don't care. Like, I just want to be safe and protect myself and my family. And so that happened a little bit there, just on a personal level. But then also, in terms of, yeah, even on a business level, we were thankfully okay. The team thankfully has transitioned pretty well into working remotely. I think the worst part is we do have some people on the team, like, even for me, like, I experienced some kind of depression a little bit of just being on Zoom all day, being home, and like, not, I want to be able to like hug. I miss like hugging people, and like, I don't know, like eating dinner and coffee and grabbing food with people. Like, that feeling is definitely not quite there. And so even talking about it now, I'm like, oh, I'm getting a little emotional. I miss that a lot. And so that was really rough for both me as well as some of my colleagues, in the company. And so we've tried to find ways to kind of cope with it. We play, I don't know, some board games or like video games together online. And there's a lot of these like online board game websites that came around recently. So thankfully it's a lot easier and like Jackbox and all these other fun little games, that we play. So that's been like okay. But yeah, I'm trying to think of, I think on a personal level, I was actually, I had a couple racist attacks at the very beginning of the pandemic, because Trump called it the China virus, and yeah, that's true. Yeah, it came from China, like, I couldn't care less, right? But the problem is that it kind of, I felt like kind of indirectly, I don't know, in a way, encouraged these kind of racist people to, to spit on me at a Costco, or to walk and stalk me behind, people who like stalk me down the street while I have groceries. I'm just walking home, and they're kind of like,
this is where one of the things that frustrates me the most. This is where you live. This is your home. Like, I mean, this is your home. This is where your neighborhood. This is your community, and these are people that are in your community.
yeah, exactly. I mean, and I've lived in America for so many years now, right? And I've been here since I was 3. So all my memories are actually of Utah. Actually, I grew up in Utah. So and so it's really unfortunate that people, felt like when they look at me, they just know, like, because of, I don't know, the way I look, my hair color, skin color, whatever, they're like, oh, she's like Asian, and so, go back to your home country. And it's like a lot of those kinds of comments. And then when, the whole Black Lives Matter movement happened, I was like, oh, you guys better learn from this, because people were sharing like this, what I went through was nothing compared to what the Black community in Utah even went through. At the time, we had actually one of the people in our own community was shot, actually many, many years ago, and he never got justice, and the police just tried to pay off the family and stuff. And so, these kinds of things all resurfaced again during the Black Lives Matter, kind of resurfacing back in around May and June. And I was like, see, you guys, like, people are dying because of this kind of stuff, because of your actions, and like that has got to go, that was kind of a time when I felt like, even amongst our own investors, by the way, like, I got into some lengthy arguments with our own investors who, and a lot of these investors are, they're a demographic, you can probably guess, they're a lot older, and they're likely Caucasian, right? And they'll talk to me, they'll be like, well, I don't see color, like race, they have these other kind of justifications, like, oh, I don't see color or race, I just see you for who you are. But then I'm telling them, like, if you don't see that I'm Chinese, then you don't appreciate the background I have and the culture that I do have, right? And like, and people just don't understand. And so I got into a lot of these, but it was nice because at least it felt like it was okay to have those conversations for once. Whereas, like, 10 years ago, I don't think I would have ever felt comfortable talking to these guys about like race or anything like discrimination.
Well, you know what? I think that's one of the things that's interesting, because not only is it, I feel like a lot of people for quite some time just didn't want to have deep conversations at all. And so if nothing else, you could agree with me or disagree with me, but we're talking.
Yep.
For you to be able to have that conversation with your investors, that's a big thing, because people are talking. And again, I don't have to agree with you, but you're letting me have my voice and I'm letting you have your voice. And if I learn anything, that's a plus. So I think that's beneficial, because they are, it's the rule of thumb is like religion, money, and I forgot what was the other thing that you're not supposed to talk about. Religion, something else. But it's up there. And politics. Oh, duh, politics.
Yep.
And so those are 3 things that it's been part of our norms. Like, oh, no, don't talk about that, because if you talk about it, it's be prepared for a major discussion or a war. And for you to be able to do that, because you are being trusted with their money, and they have, yes, you're going to say something, hopefully not derogatory in any way, hopefully, But I mean, even if it's like slightly derogatory where I don't see color, well, that's impossible that you don't, because you're looking at me, I'm looking at you. Um, they're talking. They're not hiding it. It's not behind the tables, and they're just like, oh no, I only see green. So I think that's you in your situation is, I think you're in a great situation because you're bringing out that conversation, because there's no choice. I'm a Chinese woman that is a individual that is taking care of your funds. And I go, and I'm the one that's knowledgeable. You could have gone anywhere. I'm the one that's knowledgeable, and I'm bringing forth. So it's a benefit for them to be able to talk to you like a human being.
Exactly, 100%. And it's a conversation that I actually do want to have with them too, because I'm curious about their viewpoints. How did they get to where they are, and do they think it was purely based on luck, or did their skin color affect anything and make it harder? Probably, likely not. And I had to explain to them, like, these microaggressions I get, being spat on at a Costco. Have you ever been spat on in a Costco before? I ask them, these questions, and they're like, whoa, like that happens to you? I'm like, yeah, it does. And that's why I speak up and talk to them about these stories, because they do happen to real life people. They could happen to you any day. And so I tell them these stories, and then and it's funny because I find out that their kids and their grandkids believe totally different things. They have grandkids that are totally for the Black Lives Matter movement. And so it's like interesting to see, like, it might even just be a weird, it's a generational thing. Maybe the way they grew up was a different culture. I don't know, but at least we're having this discussion now, and I'm bringing it out of them.
So you mentioned earlier that you and your team have been playing games, and playing games as in not playing games with people's money, but playing games as in like trying to find a way to keep the community together. How are you balancing your personal, the anxieties of what's going on? You're going out in your community. The community is like, just off tilt by a lot. Your clients and their needs, and your team. Your team is like you are behind that wealthy gentleman, or a woman, but I'm going to say gentleman because it's usually the gentleman. So you're behind this individual that's being very wealthy, which is the irony where you're making them wealthy and they don't even realize and recognize who you are. And then you have that team that's like really behind you. So you're juggling so much, and now 2 companies, because in essence you still have 2 companies. How are you able to balance? I mean, I hate using that word, but how are you balancing all of this? Because I feel like you're an octopus holding many scales.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard. Some days are harder than others, but like I think a lot of it is just making sure, at the end of the day, like that I do the things I need to do and then finish. And everything's kind of, one thing that's nice is I feel like a lot of my stuff is interrelated. I find time to, talk to my team, and then it's related to talking to my investors, and then, answering all the inquiries and emails and stuff. And so just kind of making sure that I also do all those things. At least it doesn't have to be like the day of, but at least like on time enough that I can still, afford to have some time for my own self, and to do whatever, right now I'm like really into like arts and crafts and like random things like that. So just letting myself go, at the end of the day, and just being like, oh, I can do these fun things too, or maybe go on a hike today or something, just like finding time for yourself and to relax is super important. And then, making sure that you're working at the right time. So for me, it's like, I set really strict times that I work, and just make sure that, during these at least like these, couple of hours that I'm going to be focused 100% on working. And then after that, I can let myself be distracted, turn on the TV and watch all the crazy stuff happening in the news, and answer my emails, to be a lot more kind of relaxed during the rest of the day. But at least that way I know when I go to sleep at night that I focused, like for those couple of hours, I was in 100% focus. And so it helps a lot, just learning to kind of manage time. And of course, during quarantine, it took me a while to kind of get into the habit of it. But once you get in the habit of it, it's like, it, becomes kind of more natural, I guess.
It'd be weird to actually go back to the way that we were, because you're so comfortable and you've created your habit. And so it's going to be very difficult. I think it's going to be very difficult for a lot of people, including pets. If you have pets at home, including the pets, that we're going to freak out when you guys should go back to normal. 2 questions. What would you tell, look, you are a businesswoman, you are an entrepreneur, you're an innovator. What would you tell anybody that is at home right now, because they're working from home, they're realizing more and more they don't like their jobs, and they're like, you know what, I'm just like investigating what I could do. I'm thinking about just jumping ship and starting a company. Or the individual that just got furloughed, they got fired, they have no other choice. And I have a family to take care of. I have me to take care of. I should start something. What would you tell someone that's like thinking about starting their own business?
Yeah, I'm going to be the first one to say, go for it. Do the thing that you've always wanted to do. There's a lot of gatekeepers in every industry that'll say, oh, don't start a company until you make X amount of money, or until you retire, until your kids retire, and it's just kind of like, well, in the next lifetime, right? In your afterlife. And it's kind of like, if you wait and take all that advice, then you're going to let life kind of pass by you. And so a lot of it is just kind of go out there and taking that risk, and like, it's okay. You don't owe anybody an explanation for, starting a business, unless maybe your parents, if you're really close to your parents and they ask you what's going on, okay, yeah, sure, you can explain to them. But like other strangers out there, you don't owe them any explanation for wanting to do whatever you want to do, whether it's like starting a business or going back to your old employer, or whatever, being a full-time parent, or whatever kind of career path you want to take. Like that is completely up to you, and that's it. It's your right to decide on that, and no one should be judging you for that. So that's the first thing I'd say. And then second thing is like, yes, the startup success rate is super low in this industry. Everyone knows it's like what, 10% or 5%, I don't know. In the hedge fund space, it's like 1%. It's super low, right? But the thing is like, yeah, it's low, but you're going to do it anyway, right? Because you're driven by passion. Then even if you do fail in the end, you can be like, yeah, I failed in the end, but you know what? Like I made so many connections. I have so many new, better opportunities in front of me, which is true for every entrepreneur when you start a business, because you're putting yourself out there so much that no matter where you go, no matter how things end up for you, you're going to be in a much better place because of the things that you started doing, because you put yourself out there. And so I would always say, just go for it. I was in it. If I can do it from a dorm room with like $1,000, like you can do it too. That's for sure. So I would just say, do whatever wakes you up in the morning and makes you energetic, because that's how you live your life.
Golly gee, you answered that so well. I love that. That was awesome. Last question. If you had a personal and professional ask, two answers, personal and professional ask of anyone that is listening to you right now, let's see, what would you ask them? So personal and professional ask.
Wow, that's tough. Thank you for doing that, by the way, because I'm used to like, what do you call it? Doing favors for people all the time, but I'm never used to like asking. It's hard for me to ask for stuff. So I'll say like a personal ask might be, I'm writing a book coming out probably around 2021. It's tentatively called like The Finance Snake, memoir about my $1 billion hedge fund. I would love for people to check out that book if you do get the chance to next year at some point. So that's my personal ask. And I guess professional ask is maybe check out the website for my new company, Databento, which is coming out soon. So it's just databento.com, like a bento box. So yeah, I would love for people to just check out the website and let me know what people think. So that's it.
I have to say, when you first said the name during the intro, I love the bento part, because I love a good bento box. It's just like literally the entire day's meal right there, which is fantastic. Why the name?
We want people to be able to buy data in smaller slices from different sources. So instead of buying in bulk, like the Costco packs, like why don't we just get a little bit of each thing? It's a lot cheaper that way. And it's like a bento box assortment of different data sets. So that's the service we literally provide.
Brilliant. Oh my goodness, Christina, thank you so very much for talking to me. Thank you very much for the catch up. And I love all your story, not just your work story, all of your story. I think that's one of the things that people forget all the time. A small business owner, an innovator, entrepreneur, you guys are so much more than just the business that you see. And when you're walking out your door and you're going to that neighborhood store, or the dry cleaner, the individual that sponsors the baseball teams or the soccer teams, small businesses, innovators know how to pivot, know how to really make our community stronger, and you are making our community stronger.
Thank you so much.
You've been around for such a long time. Everyone's like, I'm like, but she's a kid. You've been around for such a long time, and you've done so much in that time, and you've used your time well. And I will support you till the cows come home, or until the goats come home.
Thank you so much. I'll look forward to. I'll ping you a photo of those goats once I get them.
Oh no, my God, I definitely want it, because I think that's just like so cute. One, they're still alive. I love that. I did yoga. I took friends to goat yoga, which
that's so cute.
I love goats. They're just like, baby goats are the best. So I love that your grandmother took care of you.
Yeah.
When this is like, I was gonna say like at the beginning of the year, the start of 2021, I was gonna do it at the end of the year, but at the start of 2021, I'm gonna come back to a lot of you guys that I spoke to. I just want to see what the end of the year brought to you. And then your book will come out. So wait, what's the month that the book will come out, or when around should we prepared?
I have no idea yet. I will let you know as well, and then we can figure out the time.
All right, that'd be good because I definitely want to promote in every single way. But I mean, I do adore you. I love what you're doing. I love that you're a powerhouse in finance and you're a woman. I mean, one of my biggest, like I always say, like my professional girl crush is Melody Hobson. She's amazing. I mean, and I love that you're in that realm of just like a lot of strong women that are like creating, not just like on the tailwinds, but creating a whole entire different way of embracing, enjoying, and conversing about finance. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Jodi. I appreciate all your time here and everything you've done for this community. It is fantastic. And I hope everyone checks out your podcast. Every single episode is amazing.
Oh my God. All right, my friend. Thank you so very much. And I will talk to you soon.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye.